So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Political No Brainer, the podcast where we move past winner takes all politics and into real conversation. And today I'm with Alan the Paraclete, and Alan is going to explain to us, even though I've familiarized myself prior to the interview, what a Paraclete is, but I want Alan to jump in and give us his explanation of exactly what a Paraclete is. And he's got a great story to tell. And really just kicking it off. America's going through a transformation unlike ever before. The people are awakening and realizing that the old systems are just not working. And that's one of the reasons we see this. We've got this president that a lot of people really don't like, but a lot of people really like him simply because he's breaking apart the old system. Now, I'm not necessarily opposed to breaking apart the old system. What I am opposed to is what's going on and what's affecting people in negative ways and hurting people really bad. But Alan, jump right in and just tell us, just like I said, let's start with the Paraclete and then jump right in and take over.
Okay, the paraclete is where my inspiration comes from. So in the Bible, Jesus talks about another, a helper for humanity, a advocate for the divine plan, the spirit of truth, and that's who I associate with. The the term that is better known for the paraclete is the Holy Spirit. So if you continue reading a little bit about the Bible, you see that at the end of times, the Spirit of God will be poured into all flesh. We are all waking up to the reality that we need to mature, we need to grow as a species, as a nation, so that we can make things better, so that we can reach the future that we've always wanted. And that's, my job. That's one of the things that I try to do, try to guide people to understand what's happening with clarity and try to interpret the world in a mystical sense, in a sense that you can see the signs in the world that's guiding us and telling us, hey, this is the time. Don't wait around. This is the time for change. And I try to show, some of the examples of those signs through my book. I wrote a book called The Modern Citizen, and it's the spiritual evolution of humanity and how to create a better world. And it's just looking at the world in a different perspective and trying to see or read the signs or the messages that are being delivered to humanity.
So let's talk about some of the redesigns. And now I'm going to throw out maybe some of my ideas of what the redesigns should be. But and then I want you to just, or if you want to start by telling me what the redesign should be. Like for me, I think a redesign after 50 years, and granted, I don't know that you're going in this direction, but I'm just going to give you my idea of a redesign is after 50 something years, the Palestinian people should have a state of their own, right? So is that a redesign, or is that just something we've dithered with the idea for too long, or how do you feel about the redesign?
Well, we need to look at the whole picture and the whole history of humanity and what it is that we want to create and what it is. What people are thinking is unity as a species, that we can work together towards making a better future for everybody, to increase the prosperity around the world, so everybody has enough and is not fighting over what's yours and what's mine. So that's a grand vision that we got to work towards. And in relation to global politics, the evolution is large. We have come to realize that the world doesn't need a superpower to rule the world. It has never worked and never will. So they have all come and go. Everybody has had their chance. We need to unite. We need to come together. And we even created an institution for that, which we set aside, and we said, we don't want to deal with these people. We don't want to support the United Nations anymore. Maybe the United Nations, I think it should be restructured in such a way that, larger and wealthier and more prosperous countries have more say because they have more to lose. As it is right now, we only have, each nation with one vote. So somebody in South Africa or in Egypt can decide what happens in the whole world. I think it needs to be restructured. But we need to work together. And that means that any military action that is not a direct aggression towards another country needs to go through a United Nations. and a committee to understand, and for the world to decide, hey, we got to put a stop to this, or no, these people have not done anything wrong. And that's one way for the United States to lead by example, to relinquish some of its power and teach the world that we want to lead, but we want to lead through wisdom, not by force. And it's a major change in the way that we think and the way the world is progressing. So that's one of the ideas. There's so many, but yeah, it's what we have dreamed of, for a very long time, to have a united human species, because that's what we are in reality, and to have the prosperity around the world where everybody has whatever they need. They have refrigerators and they have stoves and they have clean running water and opportunities and safety, so that we don't have to worry about immigrations, because a lot of people that come, for example, to the United States or to other countries that are developed, they go there because they're either persecuted, they don't feel safe in their country, or they don't have opportunity. But they don't really want to go away from their home. They love their home. They love their people. They love their culture, their food, their music, but they're struggling and they need to find another way. But if they can find that in their own country, there's no need for anybody to migrate anywhere else. And that's what a lot of visionaries and even entrepreneurs nowadays have realized, that to spread that prosperity is going to help everybody.
Absolutely. So let me just unpack a few things one at a time. When you talk
Yeah.
about the UN and everybody having one vote, we need to keep in mind that yes, every nation has one vote. But of those, I think it's 172 nations at the UN, only 5 have veto power. So that's really a loaded gun right there. So when we talk about
Right.
the UN being the place where we can resolve issues, it has never been the place where we can resolve issues, where we can come to this global sort of utopia. It's not the place to, at this point in time, the way the system's been designed, again, we're back to a superpower. There's 5. I can name them. There's no need, but I assure you, there's only 5 with veto power. China, the U.S., and Russia being 3 of them. I think Britain is another one, and actually the 5th one I'm struggling with right now. But once you got that veto power, you've got this vote on the floor that says we're gonna really do this thing. We're gonna really create a system that really helps everybody level up. And any one of those 5 are gonna lose out a lot, and they veto the whole resolution. Bing, it's done. So that's an issue right there. Then you got to talk about each individual. So the greatest thing that I think you just mentioned was entrepreneurship. I believe that ultimately our new generation can come to that realization that if we do really, really, truly, because the globalized economy as we formed it back starting in the Reagan days or the Nixon days where it included China in the world economy, was again based towards very few, very successful, and a giant petri dish towards towards the underclass. So again, so now we're at this precipice, just like you said, we're at this time in history where people are recognizing. I have 11 rental properties, and there's a lot of people in every community in America with homeless people, with children, with So yeah, we're coming to the realization that something needs to be done, and that's the Paraclete, that's the Holy Spirit, that's you. It's inadvertently me. I'm not a Paraclete, but I'm a Catholic that
Sure you are. Sure you are.
Sure, and that's what we try to spread that word is we try to say, and I've always said, let's spread that, let's grow that growth, let's grow people's ability to grow, to level up through education. Granted, it's a out of a naive idea, but you've only got a few people in this world that are really going to succeed, and the rest of the world are not anymore. I mean, it's getting
Yeah.
narrower and narrower.
Yeah. Well, it might have been a naive idea decades ago, because we didn't have the tools to actually do the things that we want to do. Today, we have everything we need. We have the technology. We have the ability to produce enough food for the entire world. We have the science to protect the environment. We have the technology, and everything is there for us to use to our benefit. And now we have AI coming along. And if we use that properly, that's going to help us as well. I mean, you just type into Google, AI, and tell it, or any other AI system like ChatGPT, How do you create a better world or peace in the world? It's going to tell you, because it's going to take out all the history of humanity. It's going to tell you this is what you need to do. The issue is doing it, actually doing the work. And that's where we are today. Well, we got to get inspired enough to say, well, yes, we want to do this, and sacrifice some of our comforts and sacrifice some of our material possessions, and create this world that we've always wanted. It's not a utopia because nothing is perfect. Nothing is, it's not a complete peace and love on earth, because we're, after all, we're humans, and a lot of people are going to create problems. But it's a realization where the vast majority of people think the same way. It's a collective consciousness that is being created in the entire world. And I've talked to people from all over the world, and we all think the same. We want this, and we need to demand it from our leaders, from our politicians, from our, the wealthiest 1% or whatever they are. We want them, and we need them. And I see a lot of turmoil, a lot of confusion in the world, and criticism, and we need. That's not working, and it's not going to work. We need to work together. We need these people in the government. Who's going to run the government? I'm not a politician. I'm not going to run to the government. I don't want that load of work, and they just need to come to the realization that they are there to serve. They're not there to serve their lobbyist friends, or interest groups or large corporations. They're there to serve their constituents, us, and what we demand, not what they decide. I listened to one of your podcasts with a lady. I forget her name, but it's about digital democracy,
Yeah, her name
where
was
people can have a
Sadie.
vote.
Sadie, I have her
I
right here.
I had no idea that existed, and I actually thought of that because what democracy wants, what democracy is asking us, is to perfect it. Democracy is asking us true rule by the people. And that's the way we do it, because we have the technology. And it's not only about certain bills that are being passed or anything else, but suggestions, and to actually hold accountable these representatives to their word. And if you have a vote by the people that says on a certain bill, that's, the people vote and it's 70-30, and they have to do what the people want, or else they'll be out of the arena. That's the way it should be. So that needs to be restructured as well. The way that decision making is made in this country. I heard another podcast of a gentleman, he's a professor and a writer, and he said, these bills are so complicated that nobody can understand them. Not even the politicians understand them. And there's thousands and thousands of pages. He says, you got to keep the bills simple to one subject so that we know what we're voting on. And, we're not voting on something that's going to do good for us. But then on the other side, there's part of that bill that we don't approve of. So you got to divide these bills so that we can vote on the actual subject on the table that we can understand. But they keep confusing us with all these back and forth on these bills in so many pages. So it's a whole restructure of the entire system. And our founding fathers said that we needed to do that once in a while. We needed to come back and look at the system that we have created and restructure it accordingly so that it can serve the people better. And from what I see, man, people are not happy at all. Not with this government, not with the one prior, the one before that. We keep making a bunch of mistakes over and over, and the same mistakes over and over again. And that's not the way to evolve.
Well, the person you mentioned, her name was Sadie Holtzmeyer. She's with the Digital Democracy. Ramon Perez is who founded it. And it's an
Right.
incredible organization. It's just Perez is the executive director of the Digital Democracy. Sadie Holtzman is the national organizing director. And they do an incredible job. And just like you said,
Amazing.
these bills are so complex. So I still remember, and I can almost quote it verbatim when Nancy Pelosi said, "Well, know what's in the Affordable Care Act after it's passed and it's in effect."
What
She
is that?
conceded defeat right then. It was a 1,200-page document. And what was interesting about that is Obama knew from the beginning the only way to get this thing through Congress is let the lobbyists write it. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a fact. The lobbyists wrote the
yeah,
Affordable Care Act. And I've always been a fan of it simply because I said it's never been affordable. It's never been the greatest thing in the world. The acronym should have been the Available Care Act because at least what came out of it, the little bit
yeah,
that I understood of what came out of it, was we had 10 essentials, which was basic care. And then we also had the fact that if you get diagnosed with this awful brain tumor, you can at least get insurance to get you to
yeah.
mitigate your horrifying experience, to mitigate your death sentence, to mitigate the
Right.
suffering and the pain, which insurance wasn't willing to do before. They were willing to say you've got $1 million issue, it's $2 million for the policy. So at least the Affordable Care Act changed that, which I always said should be the Available Care Act. But like you said, these bills are so complicated. But digital democracy, this organization, which, like I said, was created. The executive director is Ramon Perez, who is a military guy and started after serving in the military. Where you and then and he's done an incredible job, and I recommend it to everybody because you can navigate bills, you can navigate candidates, students, and I've always said that when we've got something like this available, because you're not going to change the K through 12 system education system in America, let's just make it an after school extracurricular activity with some sort of incentive, with some sort of get something for spending your time in this class and learning what this is all about, and get rather than going home and playing video games, get some sort of incentive on us, and that
Yeah.
could change
It,
America in and of itself or the world.
it's the way of the future. It's the way of the future. With this technology, there's so much we can do, and on everything we can have these referendums for everything that's done, even war. Where show me. I mean, show me why you're saying that this country is trying to build a nuclear arsenal. I want to see the proof. Let me tell you, America wasn't ready many years ago because the people were not as smart. We didn't have access to so much information and wisdom as we do today. And the system was created so that a few very intelligent and wealthy individuals could run the country. Nowadays, the majority of Americans are intelligent. And, we can make the decisions for ourselves. And that's what we want. We want to be able to look at the proof, and you can run these super secure websites through the government where they're going to show you where the nuclear sites are, or what this individual did, or whatever, and we can decide for ourselves. Because you just telling me, from especially from somebody that has lied so many times, and you're going to tell me another lie and not show me any proof about it. I mean, it's just ridiculous to me. And I think America and democracy are ready to evolve one step further, to become almost perfect, to where the people rule like we're supposed to. And that's the whole plan. That's the whole idea. That's the whole, the entire picture. And it's been coming along. That's why I try to look at the world in such a way that I can interpret signals that are coming from, I don't know where, the divine is trying to tell us something, or what is going on, but you can see it coming along through history. Kennedy wanted to build a more compassionate and prosperous nation, and a nation that was more geared towards creating prosperity around the world. And and back in the 60s, you had the movement, the music and the art and the writing. All the arts were sending us messages, about this unity and peace and love and how to create a better world. But once they shot our leaders, Malcolm X and MLK and the Kennedys, we we got scared, I guess, and we hid, and we just started working. We bowed our heads, and we started working, and just worried about our own lives and technology and acquiring our possessions. So America wasn't ready then. That's what happened. But we are today because we have all the tools necessary, and hopefully we can come to our senses and say, hey, we gotta, it's a leap of faith, and big sacrifices that we have to make. Like I said, relinquishing power from the United States is going to be very difficult. And a lot of people would say, well, that's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. But it has to happen for the world to unite. And as we have seen in the past, all superpowers have collapsed. And so will this one, unless we rule from another perspective. And that's what's happening in the world today. So, I just try to bring a little clarity so people understand that we are in the most critical point in time in the development of humanity itself. And we all need to work more on a collective level as to opposed to our individual level. And we need to conquer the last step, that we are being asked to do is to conquer our ego, to conquer that the desire to be, you know, individuals, as opposed to a collective unit. And that's the evolution of humanity.
Yeah, and I see that happening really. Like you said, there's signs, there's spiritual signs, there's realistic signs. There's not necessarily that the spiritual signs are realistic, but there's evidence that people are starting to come to their senses. It's just like you said, we're better at it today. We're simply better at it. The information is available at our fingertips. We're not waiting for tomorrow's morning's newspaper to be printed. We're getting the information live. But they're also politicians are ahead of the curve too, because I always used to use the example that the Vietnam War was the most unpopular war ever because it was the first time war was televised. And then when we got to Iraq War, they televised these great visions of bombs just sailing where they were supposed to sail and land where they were supposed to land. Now they're just blocking out all those images. Now we don't see any images coming from Iran we don't see any images of the Iran war. We really don't know what's happening on the ground in Iran. We don't know if innocent children, if women, if mothers, and we don't know what's happening.
It's
And so
terrible.
politicians are ahead
Terrible.
of the curve on this. But the questions have still remained. Should we even be there? And that's the biggest question that needs to be answered. Is every solution war? And it's really not. Generally speaking, I've heard from this administration, we're going to be out in 2 weeks. We're at 10 weeks now. We're nowhere near out. And when you say, like, are we going to mitigate their ability? They keep saying we've decimated their infrastructure to build new weapons. It's kind of like they
It,
argue we can't take everybody's AR-15 because they'll get others. It's the same thing as Iran. Iran will rebuild their capacity to build nuclear weapons and sponsor terrorism around the world. So again, we go into this notion that we're going to solve something with a war, and we simply don't solve a damn thing.
and we're going to keep doing it unless we change our way of thinking. We're going to keep doing it, and we're going to keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. The collective unconscious is the same as the individuals. So if you have a problem, you're going to keep repeating the same problem until you learn from it and integrate it in your life. So with an addiction, with anything problems that you have, until you learn from it, it's going to keep coming back and back. And the same happens on a collective level. So we were in Iran, back in the 70s. And I saw a CIA declassified, it was a video cassette back then, and I haven't been able to find it anymore, on how we toppled the government in Iran back then, and how we got the Ayatollah out, and how we put the Shah in there. Everything that happened, the CIA talked about it like they were talking like about a movie. And here we go again, making the same mistakes over again. So I think this time we're gonna, what we're gonna accomplish in Iran is that we're gonna create and materialize our greatest fear. I think Iran is, a country that also China and Russia are interested in. And they're not just going to let the United States take it or do whatever they want with it. I think there will come a point if we move out of there. I think China or Russia or both of them are going to put nuclear weapons in Iran
Absolutely.
under their control. Under their control.
Right.
So we're creating our greatest fear, and that's game over. That's what are we going to do then? Nothing. So we're just making things worse, is what I'm saying.
That's what we
And
did.
when you
We
talk,
jumped in this thing and made it a whole lot worse. We actually Obama
yes,
had the right idea. Give them money to build their economy, have some control mechanisms about what they can do with nuclear weapons, and we had those in place, and we had inspectors on the ground from all over the world. And there's only so much you can do, and Republicans are the one that argue that case better than anybody. When you talk about gun control, they freak out. What are you going to do? You're going to take our guns? But when you now they're going to go into every country in the world and take their nuclear weapons. I mean, the biggest threat of all is North Korea, who has made it clear and shown us their ability to launch nuclear weapons. Not necessarily
yeah.
launch on a missile head, not on a warhead on a missile, but they have blown up a mountain to the point where the damn thing's caving in all around it. They've shown us they have nuclear weapons, and we haven't done a thing about that. So even if you were to say Iran no longer has nuclear weapons, and I believe that's what the Trump administration is going to do. They're going to call it a
It's
victory, run with their tails between their legs. They're going to call it a victory, and it's going
yeah.
to be no victory. It's just going to be another. We got into something we should have never got into.
What we just finished the war with Iraq and Afghanistan, 20 years,
20 years.
because Iraq was building nuclear weapons. When we got there, they couldn't find anything.
They never found a one.
They didn't find a one. And then, whoa, well, no, because we were looking for Bin Laden. Oh no, Bin Laden is not in Iraq. He's in Afghanistan. Let's go destroy that country too. And we were there 20 years.
And he was in Pakistan.
And what did we accomplish? Is what I'm trying to. What did we accomplish? They came back. These people, you got to understand. They've been fighting wars their whole lives. They're patient. They know war. They can wait. They'll wait 50 years. They'll wait 100 years until the United States leave. They're in no rush. And we left. And what did they do? It took 2 weeks for the radicals to come in and take over the country. 2 weeks. We spent 20 years there. And they just, the people that we left there to defend the country, they threw their weapons on the ground and said, I'm not fighting these people. So what you need to do with people that don't want part of the new world, that don't want to create their country and make them prosperous and integrate it into the world, we isolate them. We let them rot in hell if that's what they want. You want to be like the Arabs? You want to have a Dubai in your country? You want to have, a beautiful city? That will help you. But if you're going to keep creating this chaos and all these problems and all this violence, you're going to be like Cuba. You're not going to have anything from us. And that's what we need to do so that, these people just don't have anything at all. We don't buy their oil. We don't buy anything from them. We don't trade with countries that would buy from them, and we isolate them. That's what we need to do. And they'll come to their senses in the future. But to keep bombing them and fighting with them and wasting our resources for what? And our lives, and our kids' lives for what? We're not accomplishing anything.
No.
And that's how it is. So I think we got a long ways to go, but we're learning and we're realizing that it's just not working the way that we want it to, and it needs to change. That's what the book is about. I talk a lot of stuff about some of the perspectives on religion, my own thoughts. I grew up Catholic, and then I don't, believe in the church. I don't think the church represents God upon the earth. And then I went into a little Christianity and individual Gnostic studies. And, it's just about learning, going into yourself and learning from yourself and finding your divine presence within yourself and then going from there.
Well, tell us about the book and where we can get it, how we can get the book, because you've been very interesting on it as far as the podcast.
I self-published it. I self-published it on Amazon Kindle, and you can get it there. I have one here somewhere. It's called, you can see it?
The Modern Citizen, yeah.
The Modern Citizen.
The Paraclete.
Yeah, the Paraclete. And it I didn't put my name on it. I'm doing a second edition. I'm going to put my name on it. But the inspiration comes from a quote from Carl Jung, where he says, who is the modern man? And the modern man is the man who stands upon a peak or at the very edge of the world, with the abyss of the future before him, above him the heavens, and below the whole of mankind with a history that disappears in primeval mists. And the modern man is not a common person. It's a person that is fully conscious of their existence. And that's where I see this awakening in America, especially where people are just coming to their consciousness and understanding that life is more than just about material wealth and enjoyment, that we have a certain responsibilities towards ourselves, towards the planet, and towards the divine. And with that realization is where the changes are going to come from. Come from.
Really, yeah, absolutely. That's where it's going to come from, and it is happening. Just like you said, it's happening on a spiritual level, on a entrepreneurship level too. It's happening. I mean, right now we're
Yes,
very
yes.
focused on the military complex economy, but that's changing. There's a realization that that's just not working for us. There's a realization that, and
Yeah.
that's going to change a lot of. But the entrepreneurship factor, the matter of fact, the spiritual matter of fact, is really changing that too. And I'm really hopeful for all that. And like I said, there's an educational piece in there that'll make a big difference too.
Yeah. Yeah. Education is it's where society takes root. It's the most important thing in a country, and it should be free. We all talk about it, and we all know education should be free, no matter if your parents have money or not. Because it's what builds the nation. It's what creates wealth in the nation. And if you got talent and you want to go to school, man, you should be able to go to
Right.
school for free. And
Even medical
that's
school,
that's
even
how
engineering school.
even medical school, primarily medical school. I was listening to a podcast the other day about how the government is cutting down the student loans for medical to $20,000. you know,
So
nobody's
there's
going
no
to be
hope.
able to become there's nobody's going to be able to become a doctor.
Right.
You know, they can't even get a loan and end up with five, $600,000 in debt when they come out. They can't even do that. So what are they gonna do? Well, maybe the private sector will step in. Well, the private sector is gonna charge you 9, 10%. You
Yeah, and they're
know,
gonna hold you. They're gonna have you brought up.
and the money's there. What I'm saying, the money's there. We're just wasting it. We're wasting it on wars, blowing up rockets all over the place, and all these bases that we have all over the world. We're overextending ourselves. And I saw also a video on how the superpowers have collapsed, all the major powers in the world, and they extended themselves, militarily. They couldn't handle all the financial strain from that. And that's what we're doing. We got bases all over the world. Why? Why? Do we have to police the whole world and defend the whole world? No.
And I'm not even sure the whole world really wants us there half the time. I'm not exactly
Half
sure.
of them don't, exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
not even sure. It's kind of like even after we left. The funny thing, it's not funny at all. But when you talked about Afghanistan, so our whole initiative there was to squash the Taliban. And we never did. It was an ideology. So you can't even squash an ideology. You can bring in every tank and every plane and every bomb. You're not going to squash the ideology. But after we left, like you said, nobody wanted to fight them. And now, if you look at the Taliban before and after, they were a ragtag bunch of gangbangers before. Now they're well dressed. They're very professional in their garbs, and they've got all sorts of government systems in place with treasury departments and finance ministries, and So we really, if for 20 years of war, if the notion was we were going to squash the Taliban, we didn't. And really, all we did was really invigorate the whole. No, now I don't know what's our perception of the Taliban and our publications of the Taliban was a little girl reading a book and a Taliban member saying, "Oh, that's wonderful. You know how to read," and stuck a bullet in her head because girls aren't supposed to read.
Oh my God.
But you know what? I don't think that's the case anymore, and it's one we can't really resolve in every nation in the world.
We
And so
can.
we
We
spent
can.
20 years there, and for no reason. And I mean, they've argued the Biden pullout, but it was almost like the most sensible thing to do. You've gotten no result after 20 years. It's kind of like me and Alan, the Parakeet, opening a restaurant, and we do no business for 20 freaking years. We lose our ass, and then we finally close the doors, and then all our neighbors are mad at us. I wanted pizza tonight. You're not there. Oh, well, you had 20 years to come over. What are you supposed to do at that point? So, as
Yeah,
much as they say the pullout didn't go well, he pulled out.
it's just not working. It's a shame what's happening in those places, to tell you the truth. But you 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 know most free nations in the world fought their way for their freedom. And you can't deny a country the satisfaction of freeing itself. It happened with Gandhi. And it's a satisfaction. Maybe they're not doing so well now, but they're doing it their own way. And that's something that gives you pride in your nation and inspires you. And it happened to us. It happened to all the free countries in the world where they had to fight for their freedom. Don't deprive them of that. And there will be a lot of death, a lot of bloodshed, but that's the way it works. That's the way that the countries evolve. And, if we can help out, you know, we should, but with the consent of our allies. We cannot be doing all this stuff ourselves because all we're doing is creating more hatred towards the United States of America. And that's why our founding fathers did not want us to get involved in the political arena of other nations because it was going to create hate and anger and envy towards the United States. And we don't want that. And that's what we've been doing since after World War II. We were very reluctant to get into World War II because of that. But that was a clear war. We understood what needed to be done. The whole world understood, that we were fighting evil and we needed to defeat that evil. But today it's like we're looking out for our own interest. And that's not the way to rule. We got to rule from the top of the pyramid, from the eye of wisdom. And that's why the founding fathers put that symbol there. They didn't put it there because it looked cool. They put it there because that's where we rule from the wisdom and understanding, and that we have a responsibility towards humanity. We are supposed to guide humanity towards a better future, not take over.
That's really a beautiful way to put it. That's really a beautiful way to put it because it's really the way we should be guiding it. We had this guest. I had this guest about, and she was from Iran, and she was one of the people, the revolutionaries in Iran. She said, "We don't want your bombs. All we really needed from you was our communication systems." They wanted that privilege of creating their own freedoms and overthrowing the cleric, and they wanted to do it themselves. And we get in there, we just we race in there with all kinds of technological superior military stuff, and that's never what the Iranian people wanted. What they want is to forge their own freedom and to create
Yeah,
their own government systems. They don't need us there. We're not accomplishing anything. We're only emboldening
yeah,
the clerics and the Shia and the very extreme in Iran. We're not helping the people at all
yeah,
in this
yeah,
system that we're in.
yeah, yeah. That's how it is. And what I what I what I see happening is that this transformation, let's call it that, the whole world needs to transform. The United States, needs to go through a transformation of consciousness. And for order to a transformation of consciousness to take place, in order for us to create a better world, a new world in the United States, the old world needs to die. So our old mentality, our old way of doing things, and viewing others and the world and our position in humanity, all of that needs to die, so that we can elevate. And it's a law of nature. Everything is either dying or it's growing and growing and evolving. Nothing stands still, and we want to stand still. We want to maintain our power and maintain our wealth and maintain that superiority that we have. Well, it's not working. We're collapsing as a nation, socially, and politically, and economically. So nothing stands still. So we got to realize that, hey, let the world die, let the old world pass away, and then be reborn. And that eagle that we have in our symbols is not going to be an eagle anymore. It's going to be a phoenix. And that's a mythological image of a rebirth of America.
That's really beautiful. Well, Alan, I really appreciate you. Just tell us about the book once more. You self-published it, so it's right there on Amazon. You can go right there on Kindle
Yeah, it's
product.
on Amazon. It's The Modern Citizen.
A Paraclete, Alan.
by the Paraclete. Yeah, I haven't put my name on it. It's by the Paraclete. And I have there's a lot of personal experiences shaping how my psychological perspective and my spiritual life has evolved through time, and the thinking of my perspective on the Catholic Church and Jesus and some of the doctrines on the church. And it's interesting because we tend to interpret everything in literal terms. And when you look at these things, you say, well, that's not really possible. How could there have been a flood that flooded the entire world? How could you put, you know, a pair of species in an ark and float around the earth for I don't know how many days? And it just doesn't seem realistic. But it's a spiritual, it's a mythological image. An ark is a safe haven. It's a place of refuge from a flood. And a flood, in his spiritual language, and these people back then were in touch with these things. They understood what they were saying by a flood. A flood was not a physical flood. It was a rush of emotions and chaos and confusion, spiritual turmoil, where people are just going crazy and doing crazy things and being completely out of whack. And that's what a flood is. And, Noah took everybody into his bosom, into that place where he was sheltered from that experience. And that's how you interpret the Bible properly. And one of the things I see today is that we're reading the last chapter of the Bible. We are at the end of times. We either evolve and grow and mature and become fully conscious species, or we're going to keep on deteriorating until there is no control whatsoever. And we just end up living in a world where there's no love, no compassion, no friendship, nothing. A wasteland, a place that you just don't want to live here anymore. And it's getting there because let me tell you, I've known, you know, just recently a friend of mine, somebody that I knew, committed suicide. Well, I started counting back. I've known like 9 people that have committed suicide. Can't take it anymore. And that's the turmoil, that's the chaos. And a lot of people are getting to that point. And it's a shame to see a humanity with such a promising future to destroy itself. And it hurts me to see that. And I think that we need the faith to carry us forward and take that leap that we need to take in order to reach the future that we've always wanted. But it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot of sacrifices. And that's, what kind of the book is about. And when I say that reading the last chapter, in the Bible it says how the old world will be destroyed and a new world would replace the old, a world composed of silver and gold and precious jewels. Well, if you look at our cities from the sky or from a tall building and you look down, you're going to see it. It's right there. You're going to see all the lights. All the lights make the cities like they're built out of gold. It's not a literal city of gold. It's the lights make it seem like it's golden streets and silver and buildings made of precious jewels. You're going to see it. Heaven is here, within us, heaven and hell. So, we need to choose which one do we really want.
We really need to choose because it's getting on that time where we're going to have to make some harsh choices. And you're very right. That could be part of it. So we're going to pick the heaven or the hell because it's getting to that inflection point.
Yeah. Just I hopeful. I'm very hopeful for America because this nation is just so beautiful and the way it was created. I still believe it was created by these deities, people that represented God upon the earth, and we've never seen that before. And they were willing to risk everything and against unimaginable odds, and they succeeded, and they put it in their symbols. He smiled upon our accomplishments. God loved what we did, and that's why we're here. We're here to do God's work, and we're losing that, and that's where we need to go back and analyze our history and the roots that gave birth to democracy and follow that, as opposed to, you know, personal interests. And then we'll change.
So that, Alan, it's been a pleasure. I really love what you had to say, and I want to do it again. So I'll be emailing you in about a month or so, and we'll be getting back at it, see where we're at.
Yeah,
And
let me know, and we'll talk about some of the ideas, because I also, I've been searching ideas from other people on how to restructure the actual system and put together a plan. I'm writing another book about
well, if you want, I'll
the
email you
plan,
my
the
plan.
actual plans of, yeah,
So
we
let me
can
do
work
that.
together on that and create a plan, because people are not going to follow ideals. They want to see a plan. What is it that we're actually going to do? How are we going to restructure the system? The healthcare system, the wealth gap. How are we going to solve that? How are we going to solve some of the political problems that we have? All that kind of stuff.
Well,
And
let me work
see,
on getting you my plan, and I will get
yeah,
that out to you today. You can look at it, and we'll talk again.
great, great, great. Sounds great. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
inviting me.
Alan. Alan the Paraclete, and your book is amazing. I can't wait to get it. So I'm looking forward
Thank
to.
you, thank
I
you.
will email you shortly.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
I'll see
sir.
you soon. Thank you.
Talk to
Bye
you
bye.
soon. Thank you.
Bye bye.